Danielle Colby convicted in Frank Fritz's death. Fans are stunned as the beloved American Pickers duo ends in tragedy. Once inseparable on screen, now torn apart by courtroom drama and betrayal. How did friendship turn fatal? Did Danielle hide more than anyone guessed? In court, Danielle Colby, from star witness to murder suspect. It started like any other celebrity trial, with cameras flashing and fans swarming outside the courthouse. But no one expected the name Danielle Colby to move from the witness stand to the heart of a murder investigation. At first, she was a hesitant witness for the prosecution, trying to walk the tightrope between two feuding men who once embodied the golden age of American pickers. She kept her distance, avoided the drama, until the drama came for her. By December 2024, the case had exploded. The Davenport, Iowa courtroom was packed as America watched the once beloved Mike Wolfe face trial for the alleged murder of his longtime co-host, Frank Fritz. What was first believed to be a stroke on October 1 had taken a sinister turn, reclassified as a potential poisoning. And in the middle of it all, Danielle Colby. Her appearance on the stand was supposed to bring clarity, but instead it ignited chaos. The FBI had uncovered chilling new evidence, including Frank's personal journal found during a raid on Wolfe's home, its pages filled with fear, betrayal, and a hint at a brewing legal war. Even more damning, a vial of neurotoxin discovered hidden in a locked safe. Lead prosecutor Sarah Harov, a veteran attorney known for cracking impossible cases, didn't hold back. Mike Wolfe isn't just a reality star, she declared. He's a man willing to kill to protect his empire. What followed was a courtroom showdown, unlike anything reality TV could script, where friendship, fame, and fortune collided in a deadly fight for the truth. Although Frank Fritz's death was initially blamed on a stroke, the truth unraveled like a twisted crime novel. Forensic toxicology revealed lethal neurotoxins in his bloodstream. Encrypted text messages between Mike Wolfe and Danielle Colby were unearthed. Then came the biggest red flag, a $175,000 wire transfer from one of Mike's shell companies to Danielle's account just days before Frank died. Suddenly, what seemed like a medical tragedy began to look like a premeditated murder. Danielle, a longtime confidant of both men, took the witness stand expecting to testify and walk away. But one explosive moment changed everything. Prosecutor Sarah Harov, calm but lethal, presented recovered texts from a backup server. In one chilling exchange, sent just hours before Frank was found unconscious, Danielle messaged, "He's alone right now. No one's scheduled to check on him until tomorrow." "Windows shut," Mike replied. "Taken care of. Delete this thread." Harov didn't hold back. This wasn't carelessness. This was calculated, she said. Mike Wolfe, with help from Danielle Colby, poisoned Frank Fritz to protect the American Pickers brand. Then came the financial trail. Harov described the $175,000 transfer as hush money. Mike's high-powered attorney, Jonathan Kessler, struck back fast. "Those texts are out of context," he argued. The payment was for a legitimate offshore licensing deal. This isn't a murder plot. It's a character assassination. But the courtroom gasped when prosecutors revealed a vial of military-grade neurotoxin found in Mike Wolfe's garage, banned from civilian use. Still, Kessler didn't flinch. "That's part of a vintage medical kit from World War he explained, producing tax records and photos from 2016 showing Mike proudly displaying similar artifacts in a now-deleted episode. He's a collector, not a killer. The trial reached a boiling point on day 4. Danielle returned to the stand, visibly shaken, voice cracking. After Frank left the show in 2021, Mike became obsessed with being the only face of American Pickers, she said, eyes brimming with tears. When I suggested mending things with Frank, he told me, if Frank doesn't back off, I'll make sure he shuts up for good. I didn't think he meant it, but after Frank died, I started to feel afraid. She admitted seeing Mike bring a strange vial into the antique archaeology office, but insisted she never knew it was poison. Under cross-examination, Kessler pounced. He pointed to over 200 private messages between her and Mike that week, many referencing Frank's whereabouts and medications. "Why didn't you go to the police if you were suspicious?" he asked. He even grilled her on the $175,000 and a beachfront real estate purchase in Puerto Rico made soon after. Danielle stood her ground. "I didn't know about any plan," she said, trembling. "I'm telling you what I saw because Frank deserves the truth. That money? It was for business, nothing more." The jury sat frozen. The courtroom was no longer just a place of law. It was a battlefield of loyalty, lies, and the haunting question, was Frank Fritz silenced to protect a TV empire? It was supposed to be routine testimony until Danielle Colby slipped. Prosecutor Sarah Harov, relentless and composed, asked a seemingly simple question: "Did you handle Frank's medication the day before his death?" Danielle hesitated. Then, with a shaky breath, she answered, "I just checked to make sure he took the right dose. He forgets sometimes. I knew exactly what he was taking and how much." The courtroom fell into stunned silence. That one sentence revealed she had intimate knowledge of Frank's dosage details that perfectly matched how the poison had been administered. Harov didn't miss a beat. She leaned in, voice sharpened. "Miss Colby, how could you know the dosage unless you intended to tamper with it? You gave this information to Mike, didn't you?" Danielle's voice trembled. I just wanted to help Frank." But it was too late. That unintended confession triggered a separate FBI investigation, now targeting Danielle as more than a witness as a possible mastermind. The narrative was shifting fast, and Danielle was sliding from the stand into the hot seat. Then came the twist no one expected. Mike Wolfe took the stand, no longer silent, but seething. "I didn't kill Frank," he said coldly. Danielle was the one obsessed with control. She called Frank dead weight. "She told me to delete those messages so no one would see how she was tracking him." Mike alleged that Danielle brought the vial of poison into the office herself and claimed the $175,000 payment was her demand to stay silent about shady dealings behind the scenes. It wasn't hush money. It was blackmail. The bombshell ruling the courtroom crackled with tension. Reporters typed frantically. Spectators sat on the edge of their seats. And then Judge Linda Mangrove delivered the final blow. This court hereby suspends further argument. Witness Danielle Colby is now formally under investigation as a second suspect in the murder of Frank Fritz. In an instant, the trial's direction pivoted. What began as a case against Mike Wolfe had now become a chilling double suspect investigation, turning reality TV's favorite sidekick into the center of America's most shocking courtroom drama. Danielle Colby was no longer just a former co-star, she was now the FBI's prime suspect. After the explosive November 2024 trial, where Mike Wolfe was accused of murdering Frank Fritz, the case took a stunning turn. Danielle's accidental courtroom admission about Frank's medication, combined with Mike's claim that she had orchestrated the entire plot, shifted the spotlight. Within 48 hours, the FBI launched a full criminal investigation focused solely on her. The raid came at dawn, led by Special Agent Emily Rivera, a top investigator in financial crimes and homicide. A tactical FBI team swept into Danielle's estate in Davenport, Iowa. Their target, her private office. Behind a hidden panel, agents discovered a locked safe. Inside was an encrypted hard drive, one containing surveillance footage that would reshape the case. When decrypted, the footage revealed a chilling sequence: Danielle arriving at Frank's house on the night of his death, October 1, 2024, at exactly 10:30 p.m. She was carrying a small bag. 15 minutes later, she left alone. Imaging confirmed the bag matched the size and shape of the glass vial found at Mike Wolf's property, the same vial that contained military-grade neurotoxin. Even more damning, Danielle had obtained the footage from the security company before police could. According to Agent Rivera, this was no coincidence. It was a calculated move to suppress evidence. The final unreleased clip, reportedly the most incriminating of all, is said to show the moment Danielle's role became undeniable, transforming her from a suspect into the likely mastermind behind Frank Fritz's final moments. At exactly 2:00 a.m., Danielle Colby stormed into the local security company, demanding a copy of the surveillance footage just hours before it was scheduled to be handed over to law enforcement. That late-night visit raised more than a few eyebrows. It also explained a chilling mystery: how the original footage vanished during the most crucial window of the investigation. But the real bombshell came days later. Hidden inside a small wooden box in Danielle's bedroom, investigators uncovered a glass vial, an exact match to the one found in Mike Wolf's possession. The substance inside? The same rare nerve agent that had been traced to Frank Fritz's medication. Forensic experts didn't just find Danielle's fingerprints on the vial, they found traces of the toxin itself. And then came the final nail in the coffin: a handwritten note detailing precise dosage instructions, penned in Danielle's unmistakable handwriting. This wasn't just helpful advice for a friend. This was a recipe for murder. Prosecutor Sarah Harov didn't mince words. "Danielle Colby isn't just an accomplice," she said. "She may very well be the mastermind." The FBI quickly followed up, uncovering evidence that the vial at Mike's house had been planted. A former antique archaeology employee, speaking anonymously, told investigators that Danielle asked him to deliver a gift to Mike just days before Frank's death. That gift: a small box identical to the one containing the deadly vial. And it didn't stop there. Encrypted messages revealed Danielle sent Mike a cryptic text after Frank died: "The vial is in place. Don't open it." In a recent statement, Mike broke his silence. "I didn't know what that vial was," he said. "Danielle brought it and told me to keep it in the safe. She set me up from the beginning." Once dismissed as a desperate bid to shift blame, Mike's story is now under intense review. The FBI is no longer asking if Danielle was involved. Now they're asking just how far she was willing to go. Mike Wolf has denied any role in Frank Fritz's death, insisting he was manipulated by Danielle Colby from the start. In a follow-up interrogation, he stated, "Danielle always said Frank was a problem slowing down production. She knew his meds, had a key to his house, and controlled the offshore accounts. I was just a pawn in her game." Mike claimed the $175,000 transaction, initially viewed as suspicious, was money Danielle demanded to handle financial issues. But according to investigators, that cash may have played a direct role in Frank's untimely death. The FBI's forensic audit uncovered that Danielle had access to offshore accounts, receiving over $3.22 million linked to suspicious American pickers deals. Just days before Frank's death, $450,000 was withdrawn. Even more shocking, after the incident, Danielle transferred a chunk of those funds to a personal account in Puerto Rico, then used it to buy a luxury property. Prosecutor Sarah Harov declared, "Danielle didn't just frame Mike, she masterminded a calculated plan to eliminate Frank, seize financial control, and cover it all up. She allegedly hid behind feminist branding to mask her darker intentions. Evidence found in her home, including toxic vials, written instructions, and money transfers, has now shifted the case's direction. Mike still faces charges, but public and legal focus is zeroing in on Danielle Colby, now the prime suspect in a spiraling scandal. On camera, American pickers look like the perfect trio: Frank Fritz, Mike Wolf, and Danielle Colby. They laughed, bartered, and built a hit show from scratch. But behind the scenes, a darker story began to unfold. By 2018, things started to shift. Frank, struggling with chronic back pain and Crohn's disease, began to slow down on the road. And that's when the cracks formed. According to a former production assistant, Danielle, once the heartbeat of the show's operations, began calling Frank a burden in private conversations, subtly pushing Mike to go solo. Her message was clear: Frank was no longer part of the future. The change was slow, but deliberate. Danielle, who had gained growing influence behind the scenes, convinced producers that Frank's declining health made him unreliable. His screen time was cut. His trips shortened. Even his bond with Mike was strained. Danielle reportedly urged Mike to keep things strictly professional, saying it was better for the brand. Then came the bombshell. In 2020, the FBI uncovered an encrypted message from Danielle to Mike. It read, "Frank needs to stay in Iowa. You need to shine on your own. I'll handle the rest." Mike, under pressure from Danielle and the showrunners, eventually gave in. He testified in court, "I didn't want to leave Frank behind, but Danielle made me believe it was the only way to save the show." By 2021, Danielle ramped up her efforts. She held secret meetings with producers, arguing Frank no longer fit the show's fast-paced direction. The message was unmistakable. The old trio was done, and Frank was being erased. According to Frank Fritz's personal journal, recovered by the FBI after his death on October 1, 2024, his final months were filled with heartbreak and betrayal. One haunting entry read, "Dean whisper every time I walk in. I feel like an outsider on my own show." Though the public was told his departure in July 2021 was due to health concerns, Frank believed something far more sinister was at play. He suspected Danielle Colby had manipulated Mike Wolf into forcing him out. In a 2025 interrogation, Mike broke down. "Losing Frank was the most painful thing in my life. I let Danielle Colby run things because I thought she was right, but I was wrong." His pain only deepened when Danielle began pressuring him in 2022 to transfer ownership of the American Pickers brand to her. Now controlling Antique Archaeology's finances, Danielle managed offshore accounts that pulled in $3.2 million from shady picker-related deals. According to investigators, she didn't just pressure Mike, she threatened him. One encrypted message recovered by the FBI in 2023 read, "Sign the contract or the world finds out about the money. You don't have a choice." Mike, cornered and scared, signed the transfer papers in August 2023, just days before Danielle received a suspicious $175,000 payment from one of Mike's shell companies. The FBI now believes it was a hush fee. Behind the scenes, Danielle tightened her grip. She manipulated content, staged antique finds, and rebranded herself as the solo face of American Pickers, while Mike mourned and lived in fear. A former crew member revealed to the FBI that in a heated 2023 argument, Danielle warned him, "Frank's done, and you're next if you don't listen to me." In February 2025, the sleepy courthouse in Davenport, Iowa, erupted into the national spotlight as Danielle Colby stood trial for the murder of American Pickers co-star Frank Fritz. The man she once called a brother was now the alleged victim of a calculated betrayal. Frank had died on October 1, 2024, and while the early investigation had wrongly focused on Mike Wolf, shocking new evidence pointed to Danielle as the true mastermind behind the plot. The 3-week trial was explosive. Lead prosecutor Sarah Harov opened with a blistering argument, painting Danielle as a cold, strategic manipulator who had slowly isolated Frank, staged financial schemes, and ultimately orchestrated his death to gain full control of the American Pickers empire. Then came the damning footage. Surveillance video from a nearby security camera showed Danielle arriving at Frank's house at 10:00 p.m., the night of his death. Prosecutors alleged she administered a neurotoxin, left minutes later, and later disposed of the glass vial by planting it at Mike Wolf's home. Her defense attorney, the seasoned and sharp Margaret Wilson, a 20-year veteran of high-profile cases, fired back. She claimed the evidence had been twisted, the footage was circumstantial, and the glass vial could have been planted. In her opening statement, Wilson declared, "Danielle Colby is the victim of a smear campaign. She loved Frank and fought to bring him back to the show. We will prove her innocence." But that defense began to crumble fast. As forensic data mounted and timelines closed in, Danielle was called to the stand on day 5. Visibly shaken, her voice cracked as she denied the charges. Her demeanor, once confident and composed, now appeared defensive, even paranoid. She insisted her visit to Frank's home that night was purely out of concern for his health. When asked about the vial found in her bag, Danielle Colby claimed it was nothing more than a decorative gift, something she had planned to give Mike Wolf. But the courtroom tension thickened when the prosecution turned to the missing security footage. Danielle faltered, offering a shaky defense. "I just wanted to ensure safety in the neighborhood, not to hide anything." Then, prosecutor Sarah Harov dropped the bombshell, a handwritten note discovered in Danielle's home, detailing the exact dosage of the neurotoxin used in Frank Fritz's medication. Danielle stared at it, silent, before muttering, "I don't know where that came from." Her credibility continued to unravel when the FBI revealed encrypted messages. One read chillingly, "The vial is placed. Don't open it." Then came Mike Wolf's emotional testimony. Called to the stand, he recounted how Danielle had slowly manipulated him over the years, pressuring him since 2018 to cut ties with Frank. Fighting back tears, he said, "Danielle told me Frank was a liability, that the show only needed me. I listened because I was afraid of losing everything, but I lost Frank, my brother." Mike also revealed how Danielle blackmailed him in 2023, threatening to expose questionable financial records unless he signed over the American Pickers brand. He confirmed that the vial found in his home was placed there by Danielle and that he had no idea it contained a toxin. Then came one of the trial's most gut-wrenching moments. Lisa Fritz, Frank's sister, gave a tearful statement on behalf of the family. Frank trusted Danielle like family, but she betrayed him. He felt isolated, abandoned, and now we know why. She shared how Frank had once confided in her, saying Danielle and Mike would whisper behind his back, leaving him suspicious and heartbroken. Lisa's statement, paired with haunting entries from Frank's personal journal, painted a tragic picture of a man deliberately pushed out of the show he helped build, solidifying Danielle's image as a cold, calculating manipulator. A former American Pickers cameraman took the stand with a stunning revelation. In 2020, he witnessed Danielle Colby tearing pages out of Frank Fritz's personal notebook during filming. When questioned, she simply said it was for his own protection. But what shocked the courtroom even more was his recollection of a 2021 shouting match between Danielle and Mike Wolf, where she snapped, "Frank is the biggest problem with this show." Still, it was the forensic evidence that sealed her fate. FBI experts presented their analysis of the vial found in Danielle's home. Her fingerprints were all over it, and inside were traces of the same rare neurotoxin that killed Frank Fritz. A handwritten note, confirmed to be in Danielle's own writing, outlined step-by-step instructions for mixing the poison into Frank's medication, directly contradicting her sworn testimony. Investigators revealed Danielle controlled offshore accounts that had quietly received over $3.2 million from American Pickers-related deals. Just days before Frank's death, $450,000 was withdrawn, further fueling suspicions she orchestrated it all for control and cash. After 3 tense days of jury deliberation, the courtroom braced for the verdict. On February 28, 2025, Danielle Colby was found guilty of first-degree murder, obstruction of justice, and financial fraud. She was sentenced to life in prison without the possibility of parole. The evidence from the footage, to the vial, to the messages proved Danielle planned and executed this crime with chilling precision, said the jury foreperson, a retired school teacher. Her testimony was unconvincing. We could not ignore the pain she caused. As Danielle, pale and stone-faced, was led away in handcuffs, the courtroom fell into a heavy silence. The Fritz family wept and embraced justice, long delayed, had finally come. On social media platform XS, hashtags like Justice for Frank and Danielle Guilty exploded, trending worldwide for 48 hours with over 3 million posts. Fans, once loyal followers of Danielle, now called her a traitor. The betrayal of Frank Fritz wasn't just personal, it was national. The shock of Danielle Colby's conviction sent ripples of grief across the American Pickers fan base. For years, viewers had watched Frank, Mike, and Danielle crisscross the country, laughing, bargaining, and uncovering hidden treasures. Now, that beloved trio was broken beyond repair. One user, Adapt Pickers Fan 82, voiced what millions were feeling. I grew up with Frank and Mike. Danielle used to be my hero, but she destroyed everything. Frank forever. A small but vocal group tried to defend Danielle under the hashtag #FreeDanielle, but their voices were quickly drowned out by an overwhelming wave of heartbreak and anger. For Mike Wolf, grief turned into action. Within days of the verdict, he donated $500,000 of his personal fortune to the Crohn's Disease Foundation, honoring the lifelong battle Frank had fought. But that wasn't all. Mike also announced plans to open a museum in Iowa dedicated to the antiques he and Frank had discovered together during their years on the road. It was his way of keeping Frank's legacy alive, not just in memory, but in stone and steel. On April 5, 2025, Mike posted a heartfelt message on Instagram. I can't change the past, but I can keep Frank's legacy alive. He was the heart of American Pickers, not me. The post quickly went viral, amassing over 1.22 million likes and tens of thousands of comments. Fans from all over the world poured in with tributes, condolences, and gratitude, many saying they had lost not just a favorite show, but a friend. When asked about Danielle, Mike gave a single, quiet statement: justice has been served. I just want Frank to rest in peace. And with that, a chapter closed. For many, American Pickers died that day not because of falling ratings or changing trends, but because the soul of the show had been taken. As one commenter put it best, this isn't about picking antiques anymore. It's a tragedy. Mike can't rebuild this alone. Under heavy public pressure and mounting scandal, the History Channel officially canceled American Pickers in early May 2025. In a short statement, the network called it an irreparable loss and a painful end to a beloved franchise. But the story didn't stop there. Nearly a year after Frank Fritz's controversial death, attention turned to a quiet cemetery in Iowa. What began as a simple grave relocation spiraled into a media circus. Gravel roads meant for mourners filled with news vans, cameras, and fans eager to witness the final chapter of a fallen icon. The reason? Developers had purchased the land for a museum expansion. After some hesitation, the Fritz family agreed to move Frank's grave just 20 meters away under one strict condition: no cameras, no spectacle. But when word leaked, the story exploded. Hashtags flooded social media, news alerts spread rapidly, and fan forums launched live streams. Local officials eventually allowed a limited film crew, with all proceeds donated to the Crohn's Disease Foundation, honoring Frank's lifelong battle. Despite the frenzy, the Fritz family gave their blessing. Frank's sister Lisa told reporters, "Frank never wanted a fuss, but he always wanted to help people. This way, he still can." Leading the delicate operation was Dr. Ilana Chambers, a renowned archaeologist known for respectful historic relocations. "Our top priority is dignity," she said. At 8:30 a.m., under a cool gray sky, a crane gently lifted Frank's granite headstone. The crowd fell silent. Cameras lowered. And for one brief, breathless moment, America said goodbye to one of its most beloved treasure hunters. What lay beneath Frank Fritz's headstone wasn't a traditional casket, it was something extraordinary. A custom-built preservation chamber meant to last for generations. As the lid lifted, Mike Wolfe watched from a distance, eyes red with emotion. "This is exactly what Frank wanted," he murmured. Frank had once joked he didn't want a funeral, he wanted a museum. After his 2022 stroke, he turned that joke into a real plan. When the chamber was unsealed, a collective gasp filled the air. In the morning light, the contents shimmered a breathtaking personal Americana collection, carefully arranged around Frank's coffin. It wasn't just memorabilia, it was a silent story of his life, told through the treasures he loved. Even his closest friends never knew about these hidden relics. Dr. Ilana Chambers, leading the exhumation, said tearfully, "In 20 years, I've never seen anything like this." Near Frank's head rested a 1934 Indian motorcycle, its original red paint still gleaming. Frank had found it hidden in a barn in 2019 and kept it secret. Experts now valued it at over $300,000, but as Mike Wolfe put it, you can't measure this in dollars. This was Frank's heartbeat. At the foot of the chamber, wrapped carefully in cloth, was a weathered box. Inside, handwritten letters from Thomas Edison to a forgotten female inventor. Piece by piece, it became clear Frank Fritz hadn't just collected antiques. He had preserved the hidden soul of America. The letters found in Frank Fritz's chamber revealed a secret collaboration that could shake American history correspondence, suggesting a young female inventor once worked with Thomas Edison, contributing to some of his most iconic patents. Experts verified the letters as authentic, a discovery that may rewrite part of the scientific record. But even more powerful than the historical bombshell was what lay quietly in the corner of the chamber, a handcrafted toy car collection. Each tiny replica was labeled with the name of a child from Iowa Children's Hospital. Hospital staff later confirmed Frank had volunteered there for years, teaching kids how to build model cars as therapy. After each session, he kept one car as a symbol of the friendship they shared. Yet the most emotional discovery was a small leather-bound journal at the foot of Frank's coffin, embossed with the words "The Real Finds." Inside were not antiques, but stories, personal reflections of farmers, mechanics, artisans, and families Frank met across the country. Through this journal, it became clear Frank wasn't just a picker. He was a quiet historian, documenting lives that would have otherwise been forgotten. The Fritz family agreed to allow a public exhibition of the chamber's contents on one condition: it must remain in Frank's hometown permanently. For 3 days, preservationists carefully cataloged each artifact as historians provided live commentary to viewers around the world. One story at a time, Frank's true legacy was brought into the light. The broadcast shattered viewership records not just because of the artifacts, but because the world saw a side of Frank Fritz never shown before. Through his final collection, Frank wasn't just a collector. He had become something more: a storyteller, an unofficial historian of the forgotten American soul. Once the final item was cataloged and removed, Frank's remains were quietly relocated. His casket was transported in a convoy of vintage vehicles, each driven by close friends and longtime colleagues. It was a fitting tribute, rolling down the same rural roads Frank had traveled for decades. At the new memorial site, a monument designed by Mike Wolfe and the Fritz family rose from the earth. Styled like classic American roadside architecture, it was humble, timeless, and perfect, just like Frank. In the weeks that followed, something extraordinary happened. Small museums and historical societies across the country reported record-breaking foot traffic. The media called it the Fritz effect. People weren't just looking at antiques, they were reconnecting with their roots, their communities, their stories. Frank's small leather journal, now digitized, became the cornerstone of a new national project to collect untold American stories. The Fritz Fellowship was launched to fund researchers and storytellers dedicated to preserving rural and overlooked history. 1 year after his death, Frank Fritz, quiet, kind, and unassuming, had sparked a national movement. His final collection didn't just preserve the past, it redefined the way we understand history itself. But just as the healing began, cracks reappeared. The first whispers of FBI involvement in Frank's death surfaced. What had once been a closed chapter suddenly reopened. The tragedy deepened, and a haunting new question emerged. Still wrapped in grief, Frank Fritz's family suddenly found themselves thrust into a new nightmare, a storm of confusion, media scrutiny, and deepening suspicion. To millions, Frank wasn't just a TV personality. He was the heart of American pickers, the man with a twinkle in his eye and a deep reverence for forgotten history. Alongside Mike Wolfe, he roamed America's back roads, digging through barns, uncovering relics, and reviving the nation's collective memory, one rusted sign, toy truck, or vintage gas pump at a time. Fans didn't just love Frank for what he knew, they loved him for who he was. The genuine charm, the humble wit, the boyish excitement whenever he found something rare. Frank Fritz wasn't just a host, he was the soul of a bygone America, warm, familiar, and authentic. He lived for the hunt, not the spotlight. His life was a journey stitched together by the forgotten treasures of others, each one holding a story waiting to be told. But Frank's final chapter, the one no one saw coming, was shrouded in betrayal, lies, and a web of relationships once thought unbreakable. Danielle Colby, who had stood beside him on screen for over a decade, now sits behind bars, sentenced to life. And yet, the full truth remains elusive. The investigation continues, and new leads are emerging. If you've been following this unbelievable saga, stay with us, because the story of Frank Fritz isn't over, not by a long shot. Hit like, subscribe, and turn on that notification bell. What lies ahead may just rewrite everything we thought we knew. The truth is still out there, and it's waiting to be uncovered. The death of Frank Fritz sent shockwaves through the fan community, not only because they lost a beloved television icon, but also because of the heartbreaking truths that began to emerge from behind the show's innocent facade. Frank, The heart and soul of American pickers had quietly disappeared from the spotlight, his passing attributed to a massive stroke that left him physically and mentally exhausted. But the deeper the investigation, the stranger things got. Medical records didn't match the evidence found at the scene. Rumors were rife. Frank had reportedly confided to friends that he felt watched, even hunted. He once admitted that he believed people were trying to silence him. At the time, many assumed it was depression-induced paranoia. That all changed when an autopsy revealed something chilling: traces of poison in his blood. Mike Wolfe, Frank's longtime co-host and once trusted friend, appeared devastated in the media, shedding tears and expressing disbelief. But sharp-eyed investigators noticed troubling inconsistencies from his statements to the timeline, to a series of suspicious financial transactions. Slowly, the puzzle came together: a large money transfer, a conveniently disabled surveillance camera on the night Frank was found, and a mysterious DNA sample inside Frank's home. As the police peeled back the layers, a darker picture of their relationship emerged. Off-screen, there were explosive arguments, unresolved resentment, and a growing sense of betrayal. Frank felt replaced and discarded. Mike, fearing Frank's possible return to the show and the secrets he might expose, was allegedly pushed to a breaking point. The trial gripped the nation. Weeks of haunting testimony and hard evidence led to a shocking conclusion. But just as justice was closing in, Mike Wolfe collapsed in the courtroom dead, taking the final answers with him. Was this the end of a tragic tale of friendship gone wrong, or the beginning of something even darker in the cutthroat world of reality television, where fame, loyalty, and betrayal often collide in deadly ways? Their lives were once inseparable, but when news of Frank Fritz's sudden death at home broke, the public was stunned and heartbroken. Social media was flooded with tributes, remembering Frank as the gritty, lovable heart of American pickers, the perfect counterbalance to Mike Wolfe's smooth charm. But just 6 weeks after the funeral, beneath the surface of mourning, a quiet investigation was launched in Iowa. It all started with a single detail. A local coroner spotted something off in the autopsy. Frank had a fatal amount of fentanyl in his system. At first, it might seem like a tragic side effect. Fentanyl is a potent painkiller, sometimes used in post-stroke care. But here's the twist: Frank had never been prescribed it. He had no medical history involving fentanyl. In fact, close friends revealed he feared the drug and refused to touch it. So how did it get into his body? The only logical answer was chilling someone had deliberately poisoned him. The red flags couldn't be ignored. Local authorities alerted the DEA, and soon, the FBI was involved. What began as a routine death inquiry quickly spiraled into a full-blown criminal case. Investigators scoured GPS data, call logs, deleted texts, and one name kept surfacing: Mike Wolfe. To fans, Mike was the face of charm, a creative force who turned junkyard hunts into TV gold. But behind the scenes, he was allegedly fixated on control over the show, its legacy, and especially Frank's place in it. After Frank's exit, Mike concealed the true reasons, quietly maneuvering behind the scenes. He trademarked the name Frankets just weeks after Frank's death. He contacted third parties to buy out Frank's share of the business, as if the tragedy were a business opportunity. And then came the smoking gun. A neighbor's doorbell camera captured Mike near Frank's house the very night prosecutors believed the fatal dose was delivered. The public didn't want to believe it. How could it be him? Mike Wolfe, the man who called Frank his brother, who shared the screen with him for over a decade. But evidence doesn't lie. And sometimes, the biggest smiles on television hide the darkest secrets of all. It felt like a reality show turned courtroom thriller, only this time, it was real. When the trial began, the nation couldn't look away. What unfolded wasn't just a legal case. It was a dark, suspense-filled drama, with every revelation more chilling than the last. Mike Wolfe, once celebrated as half of America's favorite treasure-hunting duo, stood accused not only of betraying Frank Fritz, his longtime friend and on-screen soulmate, but of something far worse, deliberately poisoning him to seize control of everything they had built together. His reputation, the brand, the legacy, it was all on the line. And as the weight of justice closed in, Mike collapsed in the courtroom, dying in front of the very system meant to hold him accountable. But his death wasn't the end. It was just another twist in one of reality television's darkest chapters. To truly understand how this unthinkable betrayal could happen, we have to go back before the trial, before the fallout, to when it all began. A friendship forged not in Hollywood boardrooms, but on the backroads of America. Two men, bonded over dust-covered warehouses, rusted signage, and forgotten treasures buried in barns. What could have shattered such a seemingly unbreakable bond? How did Mike Wolfe, the man who once called Frank his brother, become capable of such betrayal? In the early 2000s, reality TV was still a frontier. It wasn't all glitz, glam, or drama. It was about stories. And Mike Wolfe had one. He wasn't a trained actor, didn't have a media empire behind him, but he had vision, grit, and a passion for unearthing lost treasures. From a young age, Mike was knocking on doors in small towns, asking what folks had for sale. Most of the time, it was junk. Sometimes, it was gold. But what mattered was the hunt, the story behind every item. That vision eventually became American Pickers. It was never about just antiques. It was about people, nostalgia, and the thrill of discovery. And that's when Frank Fritz entered the picture. The polar opposite of Mike, in many ways calm, grounded, detail-oriented. While Mike lit up a room with energy and charm, Frank was the steady hand, a technical expert with a love for vintage toys and oil cans. They had known each other since high school, but their adult lives took them in different directions. Mike chased the dream full-time. Frank worked as a firefighter and safety inspector before finally diving into the antique world. When Mike needed a partner to help bring his dream show to life, Frank was the perfect fit, not because they were the same, but because they balanced each other perfectly. In 2009, after relentless pitching, the History Channel gave Mike the green light and American Pickers was born. Two guys in a van, traveling the forgotten corners of America, digging through dust and rust. But it wasn't the antiques that made the show a hit, it was the dynamic between Mike and Frank. Their chemistry, their banter, their shared love of history and storytelling captivated audiences. Mike's sharp negotiation tactics and eye for hidden value paired perfectly with Frank's deep knowledge and attention to detail. Each episode wasn't just a buying spree, it was an emotional journey. Viewers met aging collectors holding on to memories, families proud of heirlooms passed down through generations, and eccentrics who turned garages into museums of Americana. American Pickers never mocked these people, it celebrated them. And that heartfelt authenticity became its trademark, touching millions and turning a simple idea into a cultural phenomenon. As American Pickers soared in popularity, so did the fame of its stars. Mike Wolfe and Frank Fritz became household names, showing up at packed autograph signings, conventions, and events both big and small. Their growing celebrity turned Mike's antique archaeology stores in Iowa and Nashville into must-visit landmarks for loyal fans. But in the world of reality, TV success often comes with a hidden cost. The once unbreakable bond between Mike and Frank began to fracture. Fame opened new doors, but it also widened the cracks between them. Mike Wolf gradually became the dominant face of the brand. He was increasingly front and center, doing more interviews, launching new ventures, and crafting a personal brand that extended far beyond the show. Behind the scenes, he took the reins as executive producer, brokered branding deals, and held creative control. Slowly but surely, the dynamic shifted from equal partners to something more one-sided. Mike wasn't just a co-star anymore, he was the boss. Those close to the production would later reveal that tension had been simmering for years. Frank felt shut out. His input was ignored, his ideas dismissed, and his role diminished. Crew members claimed Mike started treating American Pickers as his solo empire. And it wasn't just about ego, it was about ownership. Mike owned antique archaeology. Mike ran the production company. Mike made the final calls. By season 10, fans began noticing the difference. Frank was quieter, less visible. His screen time dropped, his name disappeared from promotional materials, and he was rarely seen in interviews. Rumors swirled, was he ill? Was there trouble behind the scenes? The show stayed silent, but the internet didn't. Then came the announcement Frank wouldn't be returning. The reason? A vague statement about taking time off to recover from back surgery. No clear answers. No promises. Just a carefully worded press line. But the real shock came in Mike Wolf's reaction. Fans expected a heartfelt farewell, a tribute to the friend and co-star who had stood beside him for over a decade. Instead, they got a cold, dismissive Instagram post. No emotion, no gratitude, just a sterile wish him the best, as if Frank were nothing more than a disposable cast member. And just like that, the show went on without Frank. A new co-host was brought in. Ratings dipped. But the antique archaeology brand? It kept booming. Merchandise flew off the shelves. Mike Wolf was still smiling on red carpets, doing interviews, acting like nothing had changed. Meanwhile, Frank Fritz had vanished from the spotlight. But behind the scenes, his world was unraveling. According to close friends, Frank wasn't just hurt, he felt completely betrayed. Not just by the show, but by Mike, the man he once called brother. Frank believed he was more than just a co-host. He saw himself as a co-founder, the soul of American Pickers. He had helped build the fan base, shaped the show's personality, and now he was being erased quietly and coldly. The rejection sent Frank spiraling. He fell into depression. He started drinking again, stopped making public appearances, gained weight, and withdrew from the world. The sadness consumed him. And then, the worst hit, he suffered a stroke. It marked the beginning of his tragic downfall. What truly happened between Mike and Frank remains a mystery. Some blame ego, others blame money, and some whisper of a deeper betrayal, one never caught on camera. Whatever the truth, the friendship that once fueled one of TV's most beloved shows had collapsed, completely. Frank's death should have been a moment for reflection, for sorrow, for honoring a legacy. Instead, it raised even more questions. Mike Wolf didn't attend the funeral. He didn't post a tribute. Not even a heartfelt message. Just silence. Cold, calculated silence. Fans were stunned, and rightly so. But behind the scenes, something bigger was brewing. Toxicology reports revealed fentanyl in Frank's system lethal levels. He had no prescription, no history of drug use. So who gave it to him? Who had something to gain from his death? And why was Mike Wolf's phone pinging near Frank's house the night before he was found unconscious? Fame may look glamorous, but it cuts both ways. For Mike and Frank, it was a runaway train, fast, violent, and impossible to stop. As American Pickers exploded into a cultural phenomenon and the money poured in, the heart of the show began to disappear. Gone were the backroad hunts for dusty motorcycle relics or forgotten neon signs in crumbling garages. Now it was all contracts, branding, licensing deals, and power plays. And in that world, Mike Wolf didn't just survive, he thrived. A sharp businessman, a brand builder, a mogul. Meanwhile, Frank, the man who had once walked every mile beside him, faded into the shadows, a casualty of the very empire he helped create. Behind the camera, Mike Wolf was quietly consolidating his power. Piece by piece, he assembled a team of lawyers, agents, and PR strategists. He began trademarking key catchphrases and iconic elements tied to the American Pickers brand, turning them into intellectual property controlled entirely by him. From merchandise to media licensing, Mike built a sprawling empire that operated less like a TV show and more like a corporate machine. Meanwhile, Frank Fritz wanted none of that. His dream was simple: be on TV, meet passionate collectors, and find joy in discovering antiques with soul. But over time, that dream started to slip away. According to two of Frank's closest friends, the tone between him and Mike began to change drastically around season 6. One crew member recounted a heartbreaking moment during filming in Alabama for season 8. They visited a vintage car lot owned by a Korean War veteran. Frank struck up a deeply moving conversation with the man about his love for gas station memorabilia. It was a rare, genuine human moment, exactly what made the show special. But when the episode aired, the entire exchange had been cut. In its place, more footage of Mike haggling over prices, highlighting resale value. Frank was furious. He felt erased not just from the episode, but from a moment that mattered to him. And he wasn't alone. Crew members, shop owners, experts, even guest pickers began to notice a pattern. If a scene didn't serve to elevate Mike Wolf's image, it didn't make the final cut. Over time, Mike seemed determined to be the hero in every episode. That control extended to every corner of the American Pickers brand. From the scripts to the social media posts, nothing happened without Mike's approval. He copyrighted the most popular phrases from the show, ensuring all merchandise profits flowed directly into his LLC. Even the show's official social accounts were no longer handled by the network, they were managed by Mike's private PR team. All interviews had to be vetted by his handlers. A former executive from the early seasons later revealed that Mike had mastered the art of weaponizing fame. He knew the network needed him, and he wasn't afraid to use that leverage, threatening to walk if things didn't go his way. And the truth was, things always went his way. On camera, the smile remained. But behind the scenes, Mike had become a bulldozer. And Frank? He saw it all. His frustration began to show during filming. Frank would walk off set during heated arguments. He stopped promoting the show altogether, bitter over how he was portrayed. He believed Mike was being elevated as the sole star, while he, an original co-founder, was being sidelined into a supporting role. The production team noticed too. The spontaneous laughter that once defined Mike and Frank's chemistry, gone. Replaced with awkward scripted exchanges. Tension lingered between them. Off camera, they barely spoke. The truck, once a symbol of their shared journey and countless roadside stories, had grown cold and silent. Frank often drove alone, while Mike was busy expanding his empire. Mike bought properties in Tennessee and Iowa, transforming his stores into polished tourist destinations. Fans waited in long lines just to take photos in front of his office or sit in the iconic van. Merchandise exploded: shirts, mugs, signed crowbars, all bearing his name. As the seasons rolled on, the spotlight burned brighter on Mike, while Frank slowly disappeared into the shadows. Mike Wolfe had transformed. He wasn't just a showrunner anymore, he was a brand. As American Pickers skyrocketed in popularity, Mike began branching out with solo projects, leveraging his rising fame into new ventures. According to a former network executive, there were even quiet talks of launching an entirely new show starring Mike alone without Frank. When the rumors surfaced, Mike publicly denied them. But by then, the damage was done. The trust was already eroding. What cut Frank Fritz the deepest wasn't just the widening gap in their reputations, it was the silence. The quiet dismissal. Mike had started making decisions without him, changing scripts without his input, holding meetings he wasn't invited to. Frank felt invisible, a ghost in the very show he helped bring to life. American Pickers had once been a shared dream. Now, there was only one name in control, and it wasn't his. Then came the health battles. Years of grueling travel, poor diet, and relentless filming took a serious toll on Frank's body. He was diagnosed with Crohn's disease, a chronic and painful condition that made it difficult for him to function. On top of that, severe back pain forced him to undergo surgery. When he stepped away from the show, fans assumed it was just a break, a pause, a temporary recovery. But that comeback never came. The network issued a sterile statement, saying Frank was on medical leave. Fans flooded him with messages of love and support. Rumors of his return swirled online, giving hope to the faithful. But behind the scenes, silence. Frank never received a single call from producers. His name barely came up in meetings. And when he tried to reach out, the responses were vague, evasive, distant. Then, without warning, it was done. The decision had been made. Frank was gone. His name scrubbed from promos, his image replaced with a shiny new co-host. The show didn't skip a beat. It kept rolling forward without him. And Frank? He was left staring at the wreckage of a friendship he once believed was unbreakable. Months later, Frank finally spoke out. In a rare and emotional interview, he revealed the heartbreaking truth. He and Mike hadn't spoken in 2 years. 2 years of silence. 2 years without a single call or message. And in all that time, through pain, surgery, and isolation, what hurt him the most wasn't the illness, it was the cold indifference of the man he once called his best friend. How could the beloved duo behind American Pickers fall apart so coldly? Frank's disappearance had long been a mystery, but his words revealed a painful truth. He felt abandoned by the very people he helped build the show with, especially Mike Wolfe, who never once publicly acknowledged Frank's departure. After leaving the spotlight, Frank fell into a deep depression. Friends say he isolated himself, stopped returning calls, and struggled with serious health issues. Then came the stroke. He was found unconscious in his Iowa home, rushed to the ICU. At first, it seemed like a tragic collapse from illness and stress, until the toxicology report revealed a lethal dose of fentanyl in his system. It wasn't prescribed, and Frank, terrified of needles, would never use it willingly. An autopsy confirmed the worst. Frank had been injected with a synthetic form of fentanyl 40 times stronger than heroin. A small puncture wound was found on his upper thigh. This wasn't an accident. It was murder. The investigation led to a shocking arrest. Mike Wolfe, once America's favorite picker, was charged with first-degree murder and tampering with evidence. In court, he appeared worn and grim, denying all charges, claiming the case was built on circumstantial evidence. But the prosecution told a darker story. They painted Mike as a man obsessed with control, someone who saw Frank not as a partner, but as an obstacle. Emails revealed his intent. When this is all mine, we can finally scale without any obstacles. A psychologist described Mike's behavior as textbook narcissism. And now, the nation watches as one of TV's most iconic friendships ends in betrayal, tragedy, and a trial that could change everything. And everyone in the courtroom understood he wasn't just talking about the show. He was talking about Frank. Prosecutors weren't just charging Mike Wolfe. They were painting a chilling picture of a calculated, cold-blooded decision. This wasn't a crime of passion. It was the final step in a long, strategic campaign to eliminate anyone who stood in the way of Mike's total control. The smile that had charmed millions and sealed multi-million-dollar deals was gone. Standing before the court was not a beloved television personality, but a man stripped bare by the unforgiving light of justice. Detectives had begun piecing together the pieces just 3 weeks after Frank's death. Behind the scenes, Mike had quietly filed legal documents to gain control of Frank's likeness and signature. At the same time, his attorney had filed a formal request to remove Frank from all ownership stakes in antique archaeology. These secretive moves only deepened suspicion. And then the autopsy confirmed what many feared: a small wound in Frank's upper thigh. An area that would be nearly impossible to self-inject, especially after a stroke. The concentration of fentanyl in Frank's system was astronomical enough to kill instantly, and medical experts agreed that it had been injected intentionally. As the evidence mounted: surveillance footage, phone records, financial documents, and harrowing witness testimony, Mike Wolfe remained silent in court. No denial, no emotion, just a cold, unreadable stare. It became harder and harder to believe that this was the same man Frank had once seen laughing with in dusty warehouses and cluttered garages across America. Then came the formal charges: first degree, 2 counts of obstruction of justice, and 1 count of unauthorized use of a deceased person's digital identity. Mike was held without bail. His legal team issued a statement calling the charges completely false, saying Mike loved Frank like a brother and was devastated by his passing. But the silence, the timing, and the case file tell a different story, and now the world is waiting to see if the man who helped build a legacy will be the one to bury it.